Welcome to the AirCon Vault, recordings of the live streams from Airwiggle's audio conference. These are made free thanks to our sponsors: A Sound Effect, Game Audio Learning, Kilohertz, Audio Kinetic, Sound Cuts, Sugi, Boom Library, Sound Warriors, and Airwiggles, the online home for audio people.
Welcome to my talk. It's my first ever talk, so I'm very, very excited. And it's all about creating wholesome soundtracks for wholesome games. Okay, now a little bit about me. I am a freelance audio designer. I specialize in composition. I've been doing this for about 8 years now. For the last 2 years, I was working at NetSpeak Games, and we were working on the title Sunshine Days, which is about as wholesome as they come in terms of titles. And what I'm going to do is talk about pretty much the whole process from start to finish. It can be quite daunting having to create a whole soundtrack for a game. But I found there's a lot of wins you can give yourself to put you in a good position to kind of really shape an interesting view into the project. Okay, so I'll go from start to finish, like right from idea and conceiving ideas and research and all of that kind of stuff, right through to some case studies of actual tracks and little wins I pick up along the way. All right. So that's what this talks about, Wholesome OSTs. That's me holding the vinyl. The actual final soundtrack's got about 42 tracks on it. I will share links to it all at the end as well if you want to have a listen. I think it's interesting just to touch on what do we mean by wholesome. So obviously it's a massively expanding genre of games. It's going to be a world that it's a game that allows you to comfortably exist in a world that isn't high stakes competition. It isn't violent. It's just a place to really exist. And the game I've been working on in particular, Sunshine Days, not only is it that, but it's a mobile game as well. So pops in your pocket, so you can take this wholesome world with you. Being able to reflect that and amplify that using music is really important. It can do so much for the project in lots of beneficial ways, not just to what you're doing as a composer, but as the game and the project and even the games company as a whole. What I talk about today, you can actually apply it to any genre of OST. This one happens to be wholesome. And just remember as well, this is all just kind of my opinion. This is how I did it. When you get accepted to do any project, whether as a freelancer or hired from your games company, know that you were hired because of you and the way you think about things. So anything I say, if you disagree with it, that's totally cool. Everyone does things differently. It's just like my opinion, man, right? So take everything with a pinch of salt. But I hope you do get some use out of this. All right. So let's talk about Sunshine Days. Sunshine Days, what a place. It's all set in the world of Sunshine Valley. And it's a wholesome MMO for mobiles. It's got about 2 million downloads at time of speaking, I believe. And it's a game that allows you to build your dream home and show it off to all of the other villagers across the globe. Lets you create a really unique and diverse character for yourself that really hits what you're about. It's very expressive, and it empowers players to just take control of exactly how they want to appear in the world and just engage with it. It's all about communicating, making friends, and just being yourself. And then, there's obviously things to do. Like you got to do fishing, you got to do farming, you got to do all of these lovely kind of time sink activities which are pleasant and help you get the crucial currency to build up your home and express yourself. It's free to download as well, so if you want to give it a try, by all means go and give it a try. I'm telling you now, the music's awesome, but that's just like my opinion. So give it a go, see what you think. But that's what we're working with. And that's what this case study is going to form around. Now, before you do any kind of soundtrack, it's really, really important to do your research. If you just dive in and start writing demos. Don't get me wrong, that's exactly what I did. I started writing things immediately for it. What you find is it's good just to experiment and try things out and get a flavor and a feel of what you might want it to sound like. But you often find that you might be steering the boat in a wrong direction, which you may have been able to accommodate for if you just thought about it in detail and researched the right kind of things. I'm going to kind of go through roughly my process with doing this. Okay, so first thing that I look at, and it's what I look at with all projects, no matter what it is the story. So the story is absolutely key, and it can give you insights into how music can sound within that project. So the story of Sunshine Days, here it is. I've put it in quotes because I have just copy pasted it off our website. It says, welcome to Sunshine Days, a game where you build your own little paradise. You'll befriend other players as well as the animals who call the valley home as you craft furniture, harvest crops and explore the valley. Design a home, make friends and create a community. So I've just written the note, this is where we need to place ourselves. We have to always be thinking about the world that we are encapsulating, which in this case is Sunshine Valley. And you can see it's colourful and it's pastel and it's beautiful. And then you've also got to think this is where the players are going to be spending their time as well. So immediately, you know, this isn't going to be some kind of like high octane guitar solo, rip roaring like powerhouse of an album. It's going to be something totally different. It's going to be chill, it's going to be wholesome, it's going to be relaxed, and it needs to be kind of clear as well, because this is a place that exists and you don't want it to be too intrusive, but you want it to kind of highlight the vibe and the feelings. Which gets us on to the next point, which is emotions. So it's really, really important, especially with a wholesome game, to think about how you want your players to feel. And this is something that composers can really, really hit hard. You know, we are all about emotion. You could argue that that's all we do is just highlight what the emotion is, and amplify it and make it really clear that this is what we want you to feel. So we want our players of Sunshine Days, we want them to feel comforted, we want them to feel hopeful, we want them to feel relaxed, expressive, we want them to be like filled with delight, we want them to feel joyful. Now, it's interesting, even with just these 6 emotions, which we definitely want them all to be feeling, you can't necessarily feel them all at the same time. For example, joyful is like, it's really gleeful, it's happy, it's, you know, you are filled to the brim with joy. That's the emotion that we want to hit. But hopeful is kind of, it's a little bit more morose, you know, it's just like, I hope something's going to be amazing. You know, I've moved into this new place and I'm hopeful for it to be a wonderful thing. And that sounds different, you know. Delighted is just sheer, oh my god, excitement, this is awesome. Expressive is like being really immersed within it. So even just thinking about these different emotions in detail on their own, it can kind of influence the kind of creative choices that you're going to be making when you are composing for a project like this. You know, I mean, relaxed as well, there are things that just don't sound relaxing if repeated for a long time over and over again. There's some things which might feel comforting at the start, but again, if they're repeated over and over, could get a bit jarring. Or if there's lots of areas in the game and it's switching between lots of different songs, you've got to think about how that works and how that interconnects and how it paints the kind of the emotive feelings that your players are feeling. So it's just good to really have story and emotion just always at the top of your thoughts at all times when composing for a project like this, for sure. Now, another thing to consider is your target audience. Now, with wholesome gaming in general, these target audience demographics probably hit kind of pretty true. We're looking at 18 to 35 plus year old women, progressive people who appreciate diversity and inclusion. They're going to be creative with an appreciation for well-designed products. They're going to be interested in creative hobbies, self-care and well-being. They enjoy connecting socially online. They like to show their individuality visually, either online or in person, and also be aware of trends and mainstream culture, but consider it important to define their own taste and voice. So, you know, they like a good meme. They want to make sure that they thought of it themselves and, you know, all that kind of stuff. Now, I was thinking about this when I was thinking about including this in the thought process. This is just information that we do have. But I think it's also important just to point out that these just describe the boundaries of our audience, but it does not imply that everyone in that massive varied group has the same tastes, needs, and preferences. So this is just to make sure that you're really not missing the boat. It's good to imagine the exact type of player that you are making the game for and try to appeal to as many as possible, but know full well that everyone is different. So the best thing that you can really do is have a clear idea that expresses the world that you want them to visit, and just be confident with it and make sure it's accessible to everyone. But in terms of research, there are still things that you can do. So, for example, I'm a nearly 40-year-old man, for example. So the first thing I can do is ask someone that's not in my demographic, but actually in the demographic that we are trying to aim the project for. At NetSpeak Games, when I was there, luckily we had over 50% of the country actually fit the demographic perfectly, so we could create and share and talk about these kind of ideas immediately. But, you know, people in your family, friends, you know, what are you listening to? What could you imagine in this type of game? And also what kind of games they're playing. We also have like a big market research department at NetSpeak as well, and they can grab this information for us, interview players that are already playing the game, and get this information directly. Having an understanding of the type of music that they listen to will give you ideas. It doesn't necessarily mean you have to copy these ideas directly, but gives you pulls, like, you know, food for thought on where you could aim it. And then also like the kind of games that they're playing as well. You know, when we did our research, they're playing a lot of Animal Crossing, they're playing a lot of Stardew Valley, they're playing a lot of The Sims. And you'd be a fool if you didn't listen to this, well, play these games and listen to the music, because they're very successful. Obviously we want to be successful as well, and you know, we're not going to emulate totally, because we're, you know, creative, original thinkers when it comes to this type of stuff, but you can certainly be inspired, and you should listen to what's out there. All right, I feel like I waffled a little bit on that point, but you get the idea. So that's target audience, worth a little bit of thought if you've got access to that kind of information. Now, the next thing I want to talk about are design pillars. So these design pillars are actually what NetSpeak had in line when they're making the game in general. And even though, you know, I liken it to almost like the game devs, they're building this wonderful, beautiful coloring book, and my job as an audio designer is to grab my felt tip pens and color it in at the end, right? But you can still look at their design pillars, and you can see how this can influence certain choices that you make when you are composing and creating these types of tracks. So our pillars, they are made by you, and that means, you know, we want players to take ownership of what they create and feel proud of what they're making in the game. So in terms of a music choice, you know, does the music make the player feel vital and important? And that doesn't necessarily, you know, it's not like da, 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 like congratulations. It's not that. That's not what I mean. But if a music comes in and it kind of powers through the activity, it's like really cloying and over the top, it could dominate their experience, and it's a personal experience. So you don't want to get in the way. You want to support, you know. In terms of the other pillars, the next one is building bonds, and that's all about letting us feel connected. And again, it's kind of hard to kind of think, well, what creative compositional choices am I going to make that are going to make people feel connected specifically? It's quite an intriguing thought that doesn't necessarily really have an answer. But the music must be a shared emotional experience. And the way you do that, I think, is just to make sure that the music does have that kind of emotional hit to it, and it's consistent wherever you go. So no matter where you go in the game, and it's a big game, there's going to be lots of places for the players to go. Everyone just immediately understands the emotion of that area, and in a way that can make them feel connected as well. If you get onto a point where you're releasing the music as well, you can actually share this with your community, with your Discord servers, and it's another way that they can connect. You know, I love this album, I love this track the best, I like this track the best, and they talk about it in the chat. So thinking about connections is helpful. All right, it's hard to just actually the D major, that's connecting. You know, it's not how it works sometimes. Sometimes it does, you don't never know. But next one is grounded in hope. And what I have just noticed is that I have copy pasted the made by you text and put it underneath there, but I do remember what I wrote down. So it was essentially, what does hope sound like? Okay, so grounded in hope means you're entering this new place and you want to build something brilliant there. You don't know how you're going to do it. It's you're optimistic about it, but you're exploring unknowns. And we want to try and create an experience that's hopeful, that this is going to be a positive experience at all times. And I think musically, you know, what does hope sound like? I know what it's not going to sound like. It's not going to be major chord, major chord, major chord, major chord, happy, 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 happy all the time. You know, it's got to have peaks and valleys. You're going to be throwing in a minor there. You're going to be throwing all kinds of interesting chords that resolve. So you can kind of break the phrase down with chord choices and then have it beautifully resolve. It's like, oh, what's going to happen? Everything's going to be all right. You can do that through your chord choices. So thinking about that design pillar in particular really did shape some of my tracks that I wrote for this. And finally, relaxing and delightful. Does the music add delight to my day? Does the music make me feel relaxed? And does the music encourage mindfulness and calm? And this is possibly like a bit, you know, it's obvious what we got to do, but you know, we want it to be joyful. We want it to be chilled out. We don't want it going too fast. You know, tempo is going to be, you know, walking speed. It's got to make you feel calm and relaxed. So it's never going to be too high a tempo, unless it's like a mini game. Obviously, you can mix it up and stuff. But does it encourage mindfulness and calm? And you know, there's so many different ways you can do that. It's kind of infinite, right? So really important just to make sure you don't go too heavy-handed when doing any of this. A light touch, a pretty thing, a lovely little phrase, nothing too show-offy, nothing too intrusive. And these are kind of all things that you can talk about, that you can research before you've even written anything, right? So we looked at story, we've looked at emotions, we've looked at our target audience, and we've looked at the design pillars of the game. So great stuff that we can immediately start working with. So now it's time to start thinking about how are we going to do this, right? Looking back at like the target audience and what they listen to, one thing I was encouraged to look at was lo-fi beats to study to, you know, like Lo-Fi Girl, obviously a very big genre. I'm always a bit wary of just absolutely copying lo-fi beats, because it is really, really saturated and there is a lot of it, and it also potentially is just going to sound a bit underwhelming if you just copy paste that as a genre. But there are bits that I do like in the genre that I think could help with exactly what we're doing. And also, you know, people are loving Animal Crossing. We get compared to Animal Crossing a lot. You know, we get that very pleasing descriptions of it's like the Wish Animal Crossing from particularly mean comments on the TikToks and stuff. But actually, we like those comparisons. But if we're getting compared to Nintendo games a lot, it means we do have to really hit a quality level. We've got to try and get a AAA experience on this mobile game. So when it comes to conceiving, I want to look at taking two different things and taking what you want from them and discarding the rest. I think it's very important to not only think about what would be good to use and what would be successful in what you conceive, but also, you know, what would be less good to use and what would be less helpful. So if we look at lo-fi beats as a genre, for example, we do have vintage keyboards, lovely, warm, fuzzy, gorgeous synthy keyboards, and that vintage sound. It's just, it works, right? Um, they also have like generally a clean piano or a clean guitar lead to really cut above these types of sounds. Um, they pretty much all have dead compressed drums, which have a real nice kind of, I like to think like a kind of an understated weight to them, which I think is, when you're walking around at your own pace, it's kind of quite nice to have that kind of support underneath by these sort of things. Also, bass lines, they generally weren't very fussy. It's often just a long note, and that's all you need. And I was like, well, that kind of works as well. I'll move the, you know, the end of a phrase. You might need to take the bass for a little bit of a walk, right? But generally, just long and low just works. Also, there's lots of like side chaining of reverb and effects like that. Lots of different things you can do with regards to that kind of mixing and mastering side. Also as well, you know, when it comes to like kind of vintage synths and things like that, you can just make your own instruments for this type of thing. You can just use your favorite effects. You can use your favorite plugins as well. There's a lot of things like tape saturation going on. I put it in that I thought this would be good to use. I actually sort of changed my tune a little bit towards the end of it because I felt it helped. Well, I actually thought it took away from some of the clarity of some of the moments. So I wanted to sweeten the whole thing. So I'd actually put in less good to use, but I still used a little bit. And also major sevenths. It's just all about a major seventh. The major seventh is just like the most overpowered chord when it comes to anything lo-fi, I find. And then they're always chill, which is nice because one of the things that we want to have is making players feel chilled and relaxed. And then invariably, it's a lot of differences, but a lot of the time they use a 12/8 time signature. So that's that kind of, like what if we like a kind of like a constant, like a constant triplet almost. And then the way they kind of work and they break down is you have like major, just real flat to the beat 4/4 melodies and movements to create this kind of swingy element just by mixing them all together. Now I've seen it pop up in the chat about the record crackle. Now record crackle is less good to use. It's not because it doesn't sound cool. It does sound really, really cool. But you have to remember that this is a mobile phone game. And let me tell you, record crackle coming out of a little phone speaker sounds pretty crap. And then it's just this busy noise thing. And like, we want the busy noise to be like the hum of activity or the gentle bliss of just being in your space. You know, in fact, someone's just mentioned like rain and stuff. Like I prefer rain over record crackle, especially for something like this, because it's actually quite a calming, like mindful sound as well. It's something I didn't actually get around to doing. We were thinking of potentially having an activate rain mode where you just make it rain and then it just sounds lovely. Like, put it in the would be nice pile for sure. Also, let's go choose melancholy. So a lot of these lo-fi tracks just really kind of sad and kind of like they're a mood, you know, they're like kind of, not all of them, some of them are pretty positive, but overall they're like, they've got this kind of like bittersweet kind of sadness to them. And we don't want to go down that route specifically for this type of game, in my opinion. You know, there might be moments if there's a particularly poignant narrative thing that was happening that would require it, for sure. And then also they often have these irregular drum beats. So like the bass, the kick is just labored, just a little bit late, or like really jarringly off the exact kind of quantized beat that you're looking for. And it sounds cool, but I also feel like it could be a bit jarring, a bit distracting. So just knock that on the head. Keep it on the grid. That's how I like to work anyway. I'm very there's a lot of talk for make sure everything sounds natural. I'm like, no, I make video game music. Everything on the grid, please, nice and neat and tidy. But again, that might just be my neurosis coming out there. And also, I just wrote overuse of one idea. So a lot of lo-fi beats music does tend to go on a bit. Just it has one idea, and then they love that idea intensely for the whole track, and then that's it. We don't have a lot of space. We have to keep our loops small. I like to keep loops either like 2 minutes max, 1 minute's even better. But I also like to get 2 ideas or 3 ideas in that loop, and it helps for looping purposes. It makes it sound less repetitive over time by having lots of stuff happening in it. So just really for practicality, one idea, have more ideas, basically. If we look at the let's go back because I've gone too far. If we look at the Nintendo side of it, again, it's just interesting to think about in detail what you're going to use and what you're not going to use. So for Nintendo type musics, fewer instrument tracks, Animal Crossing feels like such a complex soundtrack at times. Invariably, it's just a melody, chords, bass, percussion, sometimes a counter melody, but that's it. And it sounds great. It sounds amazing. And the good thing about that is it gives a real kind of concise clearness to what you're creating. And it also gives like a lot of space for any melodies that you do think to breathe. And it leads to this clean and clear instrumentation, like this, we've got, I ended up using like about 3 different synths for the project, or 3 different kind of vintage kind of keyboard sounds, but never all at the same time. Pick one and use that one. Lots of major chords as well. I know we want to add in a little bit of minors and a little bit of like, I don't know, like Lydian stuff and like whatever it is. But generally, you're going to have a good happy time when you're listening to a Nintendo soundtrack. They also do a lot of describing location stuff. It's like if you're underneath a tree, it really sounds like you're underneath a tree. If you by a river, it really sounds like you're by a river. I've written multiple octave melodies. For this, it's just you want to have bright, vibrant melodies. It doesn't have to be like too busy, but kind of starting with a low C and getting right up to like a top C, but like a logical point means that your melody moves around and it's fun. It's like, oh, where's the melody going? Oh, let's try and catch the melody. It's like a butterfly flying away almost. And having like a melody that flits around octaves is really helpful. But keep it simple as well. Keep it joyful. Keep it simplistic. Keep it fun. Or not simplistic. Keep it simple. Simplistic. You know what I mean. And then also they have a lot of natural percussion as well. So where you've got the dead compressed drums of the lo-fi, Nintendo often just have a real natural percussion. It's just a shaker sometimes, or just a little. Like little effects on an acoustic guitar, like a little strum of the strings or things like that. Just lots of lovely little touches, little ting, like all this kind of stuff. And it's real subtle. And I kind of want to blend these all together. And then less good to use is like Nintendo music's often like really action packed. There's often like too much going on. So I want to have like not one idea, but I definitely don't want to have like 4 idea, or like, if we get like a counter melody, we don't necessarily want to go for a 3rd counter melody or all of this kind of stuff. So we want to keep it pretty simple. Also, Nintendo music is often really, really perfect. If it was again, I kind of like, I don't want it too perfect because I want it kind of a bit with that lo-fi beats kind of cool grit to it as well. But again, as I moved on with the project, I kind of felt like actually, just keep it neat, keep it tidy, keep it perfect, because it kind of matched the kind of neat nature of some of the gameplay in our game as well. But at the concept phase, at least, I was like, we can be a little bit It doesn't have to be too perfect because we want to keep the charm of the music up as well. And then, you know, quirky music. Nintendo music is often really quirky. We don't want it quirky, we want it cool, right? And, you know, cool is totally subjective, isn't it? It's what I think's cool. You're like, this sounds pretty cool, you know. I think people will listen to this and think, oh, yeah, this is cool, right? It's like, you know, what is that word even? It's just got to be, it's got to be your kind of take on it at the end of the day. You know, just go for it, and you know, don't worry too much about it, but just be thoughtful. Don't make it too twee and too childlike. Even try and keep it, you know, you're aiming the game's going to be aimed at adults still playing the game, so yeah, you don't want like Yoshi's Island kind of like that kind of vibe. It might be too much over, you know what I mean. Anyway, yeah, keep it cool, people. Keep it cool. so now we've done all of this. I would say this formed like the most of my research and development with regards to this project in particular. So now it kind of gives me a plan. Now this plan is something I thought about after doing demos, after messing around with things. I'll run you through my plan. All right. And so first and foremost, I'm going to make all the tracks revolve around the root of E, with the chords usually being either E major 7th or E major. Sometimes I throw it, so E major 7th is da 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 da, and then E major da 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 da, right? That's what you're looking at. I sometimes throw in an E major note, da 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 da, you know, but I always wanted to start on E, and it was really just for practical reasons. Sometimes I have an idea for a song and I grab a guitar and it's already basically an E, so I can start jamming, and then like if I finish on an E major, on E major 7th or whatever I'm doing, that's where I've got to end up. So just kind of logically, for my kind of working process, E works really well. So that's what I did. Especially it's a lot of work, you know. This was like kind of 2 years of writing music and stuff. E, G sharp, B, D sharp. There you go. Bass notes will often be quite long and move only to inject character. All right, so easy enough. Just whack long notes in. You know, if you're going into a phrase, if everything cuts out, having a little bit of a walking bass line moment's kind of quite playful and nice. So just use it sparingly, but long and low is good. I'm going to do 12/8 as the time signature, and it just basically gives the whole thing a natural swing, especially when all the other parts are kind of moving to a more 4/4 frame generally. Also, melodies will be simple. I'll try and span at least 2 octaves where possible. Just gives it a bit more vibrancy. Now this is just a plan, you know, like it's not always going to be like this. You know, I wanted some pieces to have a kind of waltzy feel, and they're just kind of just flat in a more kind of 6/8 time signature, or you know, there might be kind of themed areas. You know, we've definitely got some spooky areas in the game. We've got a kind of Indiana Jones-esque kind of temple vibe to stuff going in, and all of these can be kind of flexed on and kind of picked out as well. But as a rule and a plan, this is what we're looking at. And then just a kind of note on the instrumentation, we kind of touched on it earlier, but I went for kind of 3 vintage synths, and I've gone for 3 because it gives me options. I had one that was kind of warm and fuzzy and vibrant and kind of, you know, like kind of really kind of tremolo-y and buzzy and just all that good stuff. Then we had one that was just a little bit more spacey and reverby, but like different in terms of texture and frequency. And then we just had a really clean organ sound, and that's pretty much the 3 synths. Having them like really different allows you to kind of use them in combination. So you've got some like little offbeats on the clean one. You can take this other synth away for a lead, and they don't clash when you're mixing them. So all really good. I've also decided that I'd use acoustic guitar to support the synth chords, or sometimes entirely replace them depending on the track. So Using an acoustic guitar allows me to kind of pick out chords, and it creates movement in a pleasing way, which is particularly good if you're describing certain different areas. You know, if you want to have the movement of running around a field, or if you want to have just the kind of chilledness of just and when I say acoustic guitar, we are, of course, talking my unique brand of MIDI acoustic guitar with all the processing done on the top to make it sound real. But it's the other thing is, it's like I often jammed and wrote some of these songs on acoustic guitar, so it makes sense just to put the acoustic. If I'm like, oh, that sounds pretty cool, just whacking it in sounds good. And also, it's like a sunny sound, like a nice, beautifully plucked acoustic guitar has a bright, sunny sound. And the game is called Sunshine Days, so and even it sounds sunny, probably going to be good, right? I went for a really gorgeous piano sound that I actually created using hybrid keys. You can get that on Contact if you got that. And it just cuts through the lo-fi noise of the chords really effectively. Sometimes as well, I'd use just a clean kind of electric guitar sound if the melody needed a little bit more bite. Sometimes it needed that, but it's always good to have a few different options. So remember, like 42 tracks plus on this album, if they all sounded exactly the same, it would be a bit of a boring listen. But you want this gives you a little bit of head. So then the last one is like the drums have a dead sound with a clap replacing a typical snare. The way I did this, I used Butch Vig drums, again on Contact. I mean, Contact's just I use it all the time. It's so good. But the Butch Vig drums, they have a preset called Dead Room, and it just works. It's like barely had to tweak it at all, and it gave me exactly what I was looking for. Just touching on that as well, I'd often just use a shaker. I tried just doing it just naturally, but I thought because everything is so MIDI and grid based, I just use something. I think it was like Expand 2 or something. I use Pro Tools, so that's the instrument set that comes with Pro Tools, and just grabbed one of the natural percussions for that. So now I've got a plan. So this is looking really, really good, right? So we've got like, this is the plan, this is the instrumentation, and then you set up your templates, and then you start writing demos. Okay, it's very important to get your template sorted. Yeah, no, I do love. I'm a bit of an expanser. It's wildly underused, I think, but I've just always stuck with it. Anyway, just saw something in the chat there. But anyway, we use. So now we've got a plan. We've got our instrumentation done. Get your template absolutely locked in, and also at this point, I like to try and finish like 2 or 3 tracks and get them mixed and get them mastered. Even like you're going to be doing this a lot of times, and you might end up you're 20 tracks in and be like, oh god, I think I need to go and kind of remix all of them and change them. A project, I wrote this over kind of 2 or 3 years, so to think that you're not even the same person in 2 years, let alone writing the same type of stuff for the same type of project. So just be mindful that having a plan and being consistent is really helpful, because if you veer off the path too much from when you started, it's either because you're doing something better and then you should collect it, or you've just lost the plot and you've just gone off on your own, that you've gone down the rabbit hole and stuff. And you want a consistent soundtrack that goes across the whole game. You're not serving yourself and your next big idea. Oh yeah, got it, this is what it's going to be. You're not serving your ego, you're serving the players, and you're serving the game, and you're serving your team that you're building this game with. So be organized, create templates, yeah, that's what I would advise for sure. So now it comes down to practical applications of what you're writing in this game. So on top of informing story, emotion, all of those choices, everything that we've researched, the instrumentation, all of the things we talked about, don't forget that there are other things that can inform the musical choices that you make as a composer. I break it down into three main things: character, place, and utility. So with character, you know, is the music for a specific NPC? Who is this NPC? What do they listen to? What are they like? What does their voice sound like? Are they naughty? Are they chill? Are they highly neurotic? You know, that could inform the music that highlights their area. Okay. And it doesn't even have to be like an actual character. It might be an area that is just you're with yourself and you're designing. So then the character becomes, you've got to inform how the player is feeling in this area. You know, it could just be just a place that you're exploring. There might not be any characters and there might not be anything to think about. So don't worry about it. But it's definitely worth thinking about the characters that you are writing these things for. If we look at place is very obvious. It's the geography. You know, are you inside? Are you outside? Are you in a marketplace? Are you on a busy street? Are you in your home? Are you in the garden? Are you under a tree? Are you by a river? Are you underground? You know, are you all of these things sound different, you know. I had a kind of shorthand. If you were outside doing a kind of task like chopping down a tree or fishing or anything like this, I would include a bongo to highlight that you were in an exploratory area and doing an activity like that. You never heard that bongo when you're inside. You never heard that bongo when you're in a shop, you know. So you can kind of create like little bits of interesting language that highlights the areas that you are looking for. Give me 2 seconds. I've got to have some tea. Here we go. Right. And then the last one is utility. Now, this is the gameplay of the areas that you are describing. Okay. So gameplay is obviously really important. It's a video game after all, but different types of gameplay happen throughout our game. In our game, you're going to be fishing, you're going to be chopping down trees, you're going to be riding a lawnmower, you're going to be doing these kind of hands-on activities, but then you're going to be in a shop and you're going to be buying stuff. You're going to be buying a lot of stuff because there's a lot of shops. Utility, I've seen in the chat. TEA, Sammy Hollywood Summers, you get 1 Rob point. Well done. Yeah, they're worth nothing, but well done. So yeah, think about the gameplay of the area. You know, a shop music is going to behave very different to decorating your home music. You know, if it's an area that you're going to be exploring an area, that's going to sound hugely different to something where you just go in a shop and you quickly go out. You know, there's going to be areas in the game where you spend a lot of time and the music's going to loop a lot, but then there's going to be other areas in the game where you just go in and you're in there for like 5 seconds and you're out, or you're like, well, I know I need, and you buy that all right, see you later, I'll come back with some more wood, and then off you go to the wood collecting area. So you've got to think about, how does this affect the music? It's not a case of like one size fits all, which you know, if you just kind of buy music and stick it in your game and don't hire an audio designer, for example, you might, you know, you often find these games where you see that which is fine, you can buy music, right? It's, you know, it's out there to be bought and used, but when you haven't got an audio designer to actually just sitting there thinking about how does this music fit in and how does it describe it, you're missing a trick, because it can actually affect the choices. Right, so where are we? This is going on longer than I anticipated. I have been known to waffle a little bit, but we're right near the end. We're going to listen to some Sunshine Days music. Hooray! Let's go. So I've got 3 tracks, 3 tracks which are ready to go. The first one is called Travel in Style. All right, I'm going to start playing it. This clip's about 1:43. It's probably the longest track in the game. Let me know if you can hear it okay. Let's test this, that should be all right. Okay. Awesome. So you can hear, obviously, you're on a train. Now, this is probably like one of the first tracks that needs to be hear in the game. You're on your train, going into the Sunshine Valley. unknown. You haven't got there yet. Hopeful that it's going to be a good. And it's a personal thing, and also you are customizing your character for the very first time, picking your skin color, your hairdo, your glasses, like all of this sort of stuff. What you're wearing, you know? The mouth production delay, they're really cool. Little non-binary mouse, they're really cool. You've got, so you're on a train as well, right? So I beat that train tracking a lot. Well, people say that how to go in. It's fun, right? Let's oh, no what? Because it's reset. Well, so now you can hear me waffling as well. So yeah, I was basically saying we're tugging on a train. We're going into Sunshine Valley. The character that we're informing is you as a player, because this is a deep personal experience. You're unsure what's going to happen. You're going somewhere new. So the chord progressions and the chord choices are hopeful and kind of, you know, not quite super happy chill yet because you're not there, but you're like, you know, I'm excited. This is okay. And this, it bears repeating for a long time. You know, we've had players we've looked at the statistics, and we've had people spend like 2 hours on the character select screen listening to that track over and over again. So it's good to think about. You don't want to intrude specifically on what they are doing. It's very important. Obviously, you're going to later on be able to customize your character, go and do what you like, do whatever you like in this game. But yeah, it's like a sense of excitement. It's a sense of unknown, not knowing what's going to happen, but being kind of pretty chill about it. And it sets up, excuse me, it sets up the kind of vibe initially and immediately. So that's Traveling Style. Next track I'm going to look at is going to be the volume knob. No, it's not. It's going to be Let It Flow. So Let It Flow. Let's see if I got the volume right this time. Yeah, I would have blasted it out again. Here we go. Okay, so Let It Flow. It's an area where you do fishing. Okay, so it's one of the first areas where you're doing a task. And that's not what I wanted. I wanted to press play. Let's try that again. So the activity you're doing is fishing. A lot of walking, a lot of stopping, a little bit again. Oh. And the percussion, the drum stop and start. Really cool. Volume's gone back up again. There we go. So yes, so we're stopping and starting the drums. That reflects the activity of fishing. Stopping and you're starting, walking a little bit away, moving somewhere else. Also, requires river. So the piano is kind of how is that happening? We'll just play it again, why not? Oh, I see. Well, I did the playhead, not this. Okay, hopefully that sounds a bit better now. And don't forget, I'm going to share the Bandcamp link and the Spotify link at the end of the video. So you can just go and have a listen. We're describing a river. We're right by a river, and there's a bridge going over it where you can fish in. So think about a river. What does a river sound like? So the notes, I like to think of they're hitting and flowing away. So hear it. That's what I was thinking in my head. So being dropped in and then floating away. And then also you're dropping bass in as well. So this bing, bang, bong, bang, bong. Game's called Sunshine Days. Play it right now. So you can think there's loads of little tricks that you can do. So not only is the percussion reflecting the activity of fishing, but the actual melody, the counter melody, the kind of main melody of the piano is dropping little things into the water as well. Sunshine Valley is the place. Sunshine Days is the game. So Sunshine Valley is in Sunshine Days. There we go. So yeah, so lots of little tricks you can do. There's no real character in this area because it is a utility zone. This is a place where gameplay is happening a lot. But sometimes there's like other characters that end up appearing in the game as over the course of development. So for example, there was an otter called Freya who's like this fish. They're a fisherman, like they're this burly fisherman, but they have this really fancy house full of lovely things, and they listen to jazz music. Now this player appeared by this river like way into development, so then it's just like, oh gosh, so how do I do all of this but then like kind of weirdly make it jazz as well? But in the end we just put some jazzy music in their NPC house, which they also ended up getting as well. So always try and like have a goal of what you want to do, but know that these things can change. Games change all the time, especially when they're in alpha and being developed and released and tested and played all the time as well. All right, just looking at the very last track I'm going to look at, it's going to be, if I can do it right, it's going to be Dream Machine. Now this is one of many shops, this is Wheels domain. This is Wheels, and this is a vehicle shop, and you can buy vehicles in this. Okay, I'll start playing it. It's one of my favorite tracks on the album. Okay, I hope that sounds okay to you. So this is a shop, so music has to sound transactional and conversational. Okay, so when I say transactional, what I mean is click the chord. We got just that over and over, and then there's a little development. If you want a quick cycle of chord, and the phrase needs to be quick. Sometimes you walk in, I see the track here. Right, you've heard the music. I'll start chatting now. I really did try and test this, I promise you. But so yeah, that's Dream Machine. So the nature of a shop is that you want the chord progression to be quick. You want it to happen over and over again, because you're going to be buying one thing, you're going to be buying two things, you're going to be buying three things, or you might just go in, have a look around, say, oh, I'm not buying anything, just walk out. You might but you want it to have a kind of pace. You don't waste any of that time as well. So you want something really simple, cute, clear melody to pick it all out. Now this NPC, I actually wrote a draft for this shop first, and then our creative director, Ed Sibley, he said, "Oh, Wheels is into surf music." I was like, "Don't worry, I'll change the whole thing." So then we've got those classic surf vibes going as well. So the boom, cut, boom, cut. You've got that happening. You've got the sort of tremolo bend. You could have, and I've got that kind of tremolo-y lead guitar going over the top as well. Nice surfy stuff. It's not like crazy surfy stuff. It's just like a little bit surfy, and it hints at the character, the NPC. So the character made that change happen and made those melodies and kind of instrumentation happen. I didn't make it happen. The character made it happen by weirdly speaking to me, right? So that's what we're talking about when we're saying you let the character influence the kind of choices that you're making creatively. Also, we are in a vehicle shop, so I have used I'm going to forget the name of tools, but you know, that little like the little rivet, the bolt rivet gun thing, and there's lots of little bang-ins of hammers and spanners and sprockets. Like, is it a sprocket rig? I don't know. I'm not a mechanic, I am a composer, so I don't know the names of it, but use those to add a fun layer to the percussion, and then you're in a mechanic shop. Really simple, really fun, and yeah, and that's pretty much it. So this is 3 examples. There's so many more examples that I wish I could have a bit more time to go into, but do have a listen to the soundtrack. It's on Spotify. If you look up netspeakgames.com. Ratchet, yes, thank you, Steve. It's going to be, if you look on Spotify, if you look on Bandcamp, Netspeak Games, you're going to see the Sunshine Days original soundtrack. I would challenge you, if you are going to take the time and listen to it, I wonder if you can say that's definitely in an area where you're doing an activity. That's definitely in a shop. That's definitely in one of the NPC's houses, or this is in a mine area. This is in a haunted house. Like, you should be able to hear where I'm aiming these tracks, just because of how they sound, like how they sound melodically, how they sound like chordally, how quick do the chords move, and all of this kind of stuff. Also, as well, I forgot to mention it earlier, but when we pick out E major 7th, like da 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 do, I use that as a leitmotif going throughout the whole soundtrack. Sometimes I begin a phrase with it, sometimes I end a phrase with it, sometimes I don't. You know, sometimes there's gaps in it as well, but you find it appears all over the place. Sometimes not E major 7th, sometimes it's like A major 7th, or you know, whatever the composition lends itself to. But do have a look for that throughout it as well. And having a leitmotif as simple as just picking out a chord is really good for for sound effects as well. So I do all the sound effects as well. You just go quickly through a like you've got a sound effect that you can use in so many different ways. So do bear that in mind as well. Now, people are saying, can you post a Spotify link? I will do. I'll just quickly touch on the mastering and then the release, and then we'll basically be done. So I won't go into too much detail with regards to mastering, because it's relatively a simple job mastering a pretty, I won't say simple, because it's like, you know, there's kind of complexity to it, but kind of a sweet minimal soundtrack like this, it should be pretty straightforward. I would just say keep an eye on your luffs, so like the audible loudness of it when you're mastering. Make sure you keep you want -23 luffs for when you're in game, and then if you end up releasing the soundtrack, just make sure it's -14 when it's like on Spotify and Bandcamp like that. It's really good to just keep that in mind. That is like the industry standard, and just keeps it it just keeps it you get a lot of room to work with, because when you I generally put it in Unreal. You can boost it a lot if you really need to, but I found -23 just sit perfectly under the sound effects, without a lot of tweaking at all. So generally -23 worked a lot. This was just a number that I Googled as well. You know, I didn't know. I was just like, what is the level? Like, what's the standard? And then, you know, a lot of people know -14 because a lot of people have been in bands and things like that, especially if they're composers and they're trying to play Wembley and stuff. But yeah, -23 for in-game and also commercials as well. So when I did like a lot of content for like you know, social media and all of that kind of stuff as well, -23 worked pretty well. It's pretty consistent. Sometimes we did -14, but just bear that in mind. Also, low pass filters are your friend for mobile games. You don't want too much happening in the very top end, because it just gets really distorted and just doesn't sound very nice. Make it really pretty and deep and mid-heavy. Make sure you're also carving out space for the warm tones of the synths and make them soar. You want something, if something's just long and sounds irresistible, like a really cool, loving, satisfying sound, you want to make sure it's really not getting in the way of any other similar frequency. So just make sure you've carved out enough space, especially if you're using 3 different synths as well. Make sure that they're not blending too much together. There's going to be similarities, but make sure you're mindful of carving out the exact right space for them. And again, just touching on that, make sure higher frequencies are reined in. So you know, I found like with the chugging of the train and the hitting of the tools, you know, just make sure it's not going a bit wild. But outside of that, you know, relatively straightforward. You know, this isn't a how to master your music talk. This is how to write weird stuff for OSTs that are wholesome according to me. So just bear that in mind. Just want to touch on one last thing. The OST release gives you a really good opportunity to really connect with your actual player base and your actual community, especially if it's like a free-to-play game. This is an amazing way to add some great, some great just gives you like really great added value to your player. If they've got a Spotify account, they can listen to the music for free. If they've got a Bandcamp or they've got the link, they can actually download the music for free as well. My deal with NetSpeak is that it's an exclusive deal to NetSpeak Games, which I felt was fair as they were paying me a salary. So it's fair enough, right? We also were able to create a vinyl, which you saw a picture of at the beginning. This is a great gift and it's a great competition prize. We actually gave one to all of the members of staff at the time. I think it was like 50 plus people got a lovely vinyl. Really, really cool present. It's great at the Christmas do to hand those out. But then our mods in our Discord community, maintaining a wholesome community for a wholesome game is really, really difficult. I often went into our Discord and I was amazed at the amazing work that our community managers do, and our mods do as well. Now, mods obviously, often they're not paid. They're just doing it because they want to do it, which is just so wonderful. But this is a cool gift to give them. So if you've got the opportunity to do it and you've got the budget, worth doing it as well. And also just make sure the artwork absolutely slaps as well. This is actually a really great place to create some unique artwork that actually paints a picture and draws you into what your game is about. Our cover was designed by Danilyn Rees, absolutely incredible concept artist that they're just absolutely unbelievably talented, and we got to work directly together on this. So I was like, oh, we couldn't put this here and that there, and she just made it look incredible so quick. So very, very pleased with how that turned out. All right, that brings me to the end of my little old talk about creating wholesome soundtracks for wholesome games. So thank you very much for coming along and listening to my ramblings. I will be around in chat for a little bit. I will be in the Hangouts probably for about half an hour as well. If you've got any questions, I'll be happy to take any questions. But this is me. I'm Rob Glenister. I'm currently freelance. I do a lot of asset pack creation. I go on doing a lot of different freelance things at the moment. You can find it all on wobrobrob.com. I'm always up for a chat. Air Wiggles is such a brilliant creation. Lets us all learn directly from each other, and it's just lovely seeing how everyone is so different, and everyone has a different take on the weird infinite thing that is creating game audio. So thank you so much for watching. Unfortunately, Poe's gone, but I'm sure Poe the cat says goodbye as well. But thank you very much. I hope you found that interesting, and I'll see you in Hangouts. I'm going to head straight to Hangouts. I'll pick up any questions that are asked in the chat in the Hangouts as well. I'll see you soon. Bye.